Hello and welcome. Tonight, Senate set up committee to investigate the allegation of abuse of firearms by officials of the Nigeria Customs Service in Katsina State and at border communities in parts of the country. House of Representatives confirmed the appointment of the service chiefs a day after their screening by a committee of the lower legislative chamber. Supreme Court distances the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Kayode Ariwoola, from reports claiming he had a phone conversation with the president on the ongoing presidential election petition hearing. And Russian missile attacks hit Ukraine's Black Sea coast, destroy 60,000 tons of grain, leaving storage infrastructure damaged.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's oil exploration rig count rises by more than 27% year-on-year on June the 14th, according to latest report released by OPEC.
On sports news tonight, 9th edition of the FIFA Women's World Cup kicks off on Thursday morning with co-host New Zealand taking on Norway at Eden Park.
From Abuja, the nation's capital, the federal government launches a 9.2 million Canadian dollars grant aimed at enhancing vaccine equity in Nigeria and regional vaccine production capacity.
We begin from the National Assembly, where the Senate has set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the allegation of abuse of firearms by officials of the Nigeria Customs Service in Katsina State and at border communities in the country. To be investigated are the alleged killings of some residents during border drills in August 2021, or the killing of 10 people in February 2021 in Jibia, a local government area of Katsina State, and the attack on the Chief of Staff to the Katsina State Governor on July the 13th this year. Our National Assembly correspondent Linda Kigbe reports.
The mood in the Senate chamber at the beginning of Wednesday's plenary session is expectant in anticipation of the presentation of President Bola Tinubu's ministerial list.
Arrangement started yesterday, Mr. President.
Social media was awash on Tuesday with unconfirmed rumors that the ministerial list had reached the National Assembly and would be read in the Senate during plenary on Wednesday. That did not happen.
Correspondence from Mr. President. See, Senator Mbigi is getting excited. Senator Saribosa, maybe he's expecting his name to be sent to us for something, I don't know. Anyway.
Nevertheless, the upper chamber focuses on other matters before it. It sets up an ad hoc committee to investigate the abuse of firearms by officials of the Nigeria Customs Service in Katsina State and at border communities in the country. This is after a federal lawmaker brings to the attention of his colleagues alleged killings and attacks on residents of Katsina State by officers of the Nigeria Customs Service at different times.
Worried that some officers of the Nigerian Customs Service, who should be civil and professional in their engagements and handling of firearms, have had a series of shootings of innocent citizens. The former governor of Katsina State, Right Honorable Aminu Bello Masari, threatened to sue the Nigerian Customs Service over the killing of residents during one of their border drills in the state.
The floor is then open for debate.
I want to agree that there is urgent need for us to review the activities of the Nigerian Customs in our borders across this country. This indiscriminate killing is just getting too much.
Customs is a civil organization to collect and to prevent, to collect revenue and to prevent smuggling. At times you prevent smuggling by persuasion, not by wielding guns.
As the Senate is set to investigate the matter, it is urging the leadership of the Nigeria Customs Service to fish out the erring officers and probe the incidents that led custom officials to allegedly open fire on unarmed civilians. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has confirmed the appointments of the service chiefs nominated by the president. Unlike the Senate, which carried out the screening and confirmation during plenary last week, the House had set up a committee for that purpose. Meanwhile, the lawmakers rejected an amendment to a motion calling for the suspension of the new price of petrol, pending the outcome of an investigation by the House. Our correspondent, Terry Kumi, has details of these and more from the House of Representatives.
Tomorrow, that is urgent enough.
For the second time in a row, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives presides over plenary in the absence of the Speaker. Lawmakers settle down to the business of the day with matters of urgent public importance, one of which is calling on the House to investigate the increase in fuel pump price from 537 to 617 naira.
The resultant effect is an overnight increase in the cost of transportation across the country, and of course, we're expecting a hike in price of food in the coming days because the price of fuel affects the price of everything in the market.
An amendment to the motion calling for suspension of the increment is rejected by the House.
Those against say nay. The nays have it.
The House also rejects a motion to set up an ad hoc committee to collate the views of lawmakers, civil society organizations, as well as the public, and engage the government on the selection of the best palliative options to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy.
Mr. Speaker, this motion is on the need for more engagement to choose the best acceptable palliative option for Nigerians after removal of the fuel subsidy.
Selection of the type of palliative that the executives feel will help them achieve their national objective remains the responsibility of the executive. I don't think it is the responsibility of the legislature. Those in support that ad hoc committee be set up to select the type of palliative that Nigerians want, say aye. And those against it say nay. The nays have it.
This comes amid uncertainties by Nigerians and indeed members of the House who questioned how the funds approved for the president would be utilized. In the meantime, the House, like the Senate, is calling for the suspension of the concessioning of the Abuja and Kano airports as it resolves to carry out an investigation of the entire process leading to the concessioning.
The most viable airports in our country were concession to foreign firms through Federal Executive Council resolutions that deviated from the process, public accountability, and established laws of the land.
To wrap up the day, the House confirms the appointment of the service chiefs after considering the report of its ad hoc committee which carried out the screening exercise. Those confirmed are Major General Christopher Musa, Chief of Defense Staff, Major General Tarid Lagbaja, Chief of Army Staff, Rear Admiral Emmanuel Ogala, Chief of Naval Staff, and Air Vice Marshal Hassan Abubakar, Chief of Air Staff. Both chambers of the National Assembly have now confirmed the service chiefs, who have their work cut out for them, considering the security situation in the country and the high expectations of Nigerians. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Away from the National Assembly, the Supreme Court of Nigeria has dismissed the rumor that the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwoola, had a telephone conversation with the President or anyone else on the ongoing election petition hearing on the 2023 presidential election. The Apex Court says Justice Ariwoola neither spoke with President Bola Tinubu nor the Director General of the Department of State Services, DSS, with a view to pressurizing the tribunal on the likely judgments to give in respect of the petitions. The Director of Press and Information, Supreme Court of Nigeria, Dr. Akonde Festus, made the clarification in a statement today. Part of the statement reads, quote, Nigerians have been following the proceedings at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal with admirable enthusiasm. So it is advisable we all sustain the tempo and follow it up to the end, instead of relapsing into the realm of speculations and rumor peddling that will not do anyone any good. It notes that the nation may not make the desired progress in the face of such falsehood and mudslinging, adding that no one will ever be favored against the other in any dispute. According to the Apex Court, the facts presented and the subsisting laws must be applied in determining the merit or otherwise of each matter. Staying with the judiciary, the Department of State Security has dismissed claims by the National Youth Service Corps that the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in this year's general election, Governor Peter Mbah, forged his NYSC discharge certificate. It made this known today in a statement on oath adopted by its representative, Mr. Yahaya Issa Mohammed, at the ongoing Enugu State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal, where Governor Mba called 2 witnesses to open his defense. The DSS slammed the NYC over its conclusion that Governor Mba's NYC discharge certificate was fake, adding that the certificates in the series were found to have been issued to core members in Lagos, contrary to NYSC's claim. Justice Inyang Ekwo of the Federal High Court Abuja has threatened to issue a warrant of arrest against the suspended governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, over his failure to appear in court to explain the circumstances surrounding the $53 million judgment debt arising from the Paris Club refund. Justice Ekwo, who ordered Mr. Emefiele to appear on the next adjourned date, said he was minded to exercise a restraint in the proceeding to give the ex-CBN boss an opportunity to explain himself. The development occurred following an intervention by counsel to Mr. Emefiele, Audu Anuga, who prayed the court to give his client another opportunity due to the fact that they had been unable to reach him since the last order directing him to appear in court. Mr. Anuga told the court that Mr. Godwin Emefiele, who was suspended as CBN governor, had been in detention, adding that all efforts to reach him to communicate the directive of the court to him were unsuccessful. Justice Ekwo had on October the 20th, 2022, ordered the CBN governor to appear in court on January 18th this year over his alleged refusal to obey the order of the court for the payment of the judgment debt in favor of a legal practitioner, Mr. Joe Aggie. Mr. Aggie had taken Linus International Limited, the Minister of Finance, the CBN, and Mr. Emefiele to court as first to fourth judgment debtors, respectively, following an application for garnishee made by him as judgment creditor in the case. Staying on the same court, Justice Inyang Ekwo has granted an application by the federal government to protect witnesses lined up in the prosecution of Tukur Mamu, who is being tried over his alleged relationship with terrorists that were involved in the 2022 attack on a Kaduna-bound train. Justice Ekwo granted the application following an ex parte motion by the counsel for the office of the Attorney General of the Federation. The federal government prayed for 4 orders, which include excluding persons other than parties and their legal representatives at the hearing, except members of the accredited press. Secondly, an order of the court vacating the courtroom whenever the prosecution witnesses are coming to testify. Thirdly, an order of the court shielding the physical identity of the prosecution witnesses by wearing facial masks and or the use of screen whenever prosecution witnesses are testifying. And lastly, an order of the court directing the use of pseudonames by prosecution witnesses and deleting the real names and addresses of prosecution witnesses throughout the proceedings of this case. Justice Ekwo subsequently adjourned the matter until July the 21st this year for trial commencement. And guess who was a guest at the House of Representatives today? Well, it was Miss Ejikeme Mmesoma, the embattled 19-year-old girl from Anambra State, at the center of the UTME result forgery case. She appeared before the ad hoc committee on the House, which is investigating the matter, and also presented her letter of apology to the committee. Mmesoma said she had written to the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, pleading for leniency.
Because of this, I lambasted JAMB, solidly standing on my ground that I obtained my results from JAMB portal. I apologize for all the apportioned blame and all the pains I've caused. I want to emphasize that ignorance played a significant role in my misguided action. I lacked a clear understanding of the far-reaching consequences and the impact my actions would have. Words cannot adequately describe the depth of pain I feel for letting you down. This is the first time in my life at academic studies that I will be accused for any form of misbehavior. Therefore, I plead for leniency and total forgiveness for my misconduct. I want to emphasize my genuine commitment to making amends. It is through this understanding of self-reflection that I willingly accept the recommendations. and I wholeheartedly accept to rectify my mistakes and become a better person.
In part two after the break, Army troops of Operation Hadarin Daji rescue 40 kidnapped victims in Zamfara state. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, coming to you live on Channels Television. A reminder of our main stories. Senate set up committee to investigate the allegation of abuse of firearms by officials of the Nigeria Customs Service in Katsina State and at border communities in parts of the country. House of Representatives confirmed the appointment of the service chiefs a day after their screening by a committee of the lower legislative chamber. Supreme Court distances the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwoola, from reports claiming he had a phone conversation with the president on the ongoing presidential election petition hearing. And Russian missile attacks hit Ukraine's Black Sea coast, destroy 60,000 tons of grain, leaving storage infrastructure damaged. Troops of Operation Hadarin Daji deployed to Bokuyum local government area of Zamfara state have rescued 40 kidnapped victims. A top military source told Channels Television that the troops acted on intelligence reports suggesting that armed bandits had kidnapped people from several villages in Bokuyum local government area of Zamfara state. The troops were said to have immediately mobilized swiftly for a fighting patrol and established blocking positions around the bandits' withdrawal routes around the villages. They engaged the bandits in a firefight which lasted for hours, forcing the armed gang to flee and abandon the kidnapped victims. Let's head to the nation's capital now, where Linda Akigbe is standing by to give us the very latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Linda. Great to see you.
Hello, Ayotunde. Great to see you too. Now let's turn our attention to health matters. The federal government has launched a 9.2 million Canadian dollars grant for vaccine equity in Nigeria. At the launch ceremony in Abuja, the executive director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Faisal Shuaibu, explained that the grant is to strengthen the COVID-19 vaccine delivery system and scale up regional vaccine production capacity.
Wednesday, July the 19th, 2023 is an exciting day for medical practitioners across the country, as Nigeria, one of the beneficiaries of the Canada Global Initiative for Vaccine Equity Grant, also known as CanGIVE, gets over 9 million Canadian dollars from the initiative. The two-year grant from Canada Global Support is part of the World Health Organization's project aimed at supporting the scale-up of COVID-19 service delivery amongst higher priority risk groups and strengthening health systems in Nigeria.
Will enable the WHO Nigeria country office to provide the required technical support to strengthen health system, specifically for data management and surveillance linked to the transforming African Surveillance System flagship, the TAS initiative, and in the end, increase COVID-19 vaccine demand generation and uptake in an integrated mode with routine immunization and other primary care services.
Since the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination program in Nigeria on March the 5th, 2021, the country has recorded over 75% of the target population reached with at least one dose of the vaccine.
The COVID-19 vaccination program was launched in Nigeria on March 5th, 2021, and thanks to the support of the federal government, state government, and all our partners, we have reached over 75% of the target population of individuals aged 18 and above with at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine.
At least 15 states, including Lagos, Ondo, and Bayelsa, have been marked out as the main focus of this grant, owing to the low levels of primary health care delivery.
This important project is another example of Canada's historical institutional relationship with the WHO to support Nigeria in the critical work for preventing disease and protecting those most at risk.
As we embark on this ambitious journey, let us not forget the importance of manufacturing capacity and technology transfer. This initiative must not only focus on immediate challenges of vaccine distribution, but also on building sustainable infrastructure that supports local production and increases self-reliance.
Although Nigeria has recorded a low incident rate of COVID-19, this grant is to help promote routine vaccination across the country.
How to ensure the availability of food for all at affordable prices is being canvassed by the country director of the World Food Programme, Mr. David Stevenson. The World Food Programme representative made the appeal at a pre-food systems media engagement in Abuja, where he appealed that a state of emergency on food be backed with adequate security and policies which will boost food production all year round.
It's a few days to the Food Systems Summit organized by the United Nations annually, and government officials, representatives of United Nations agencies are converging on this hall to intimate members of the press on what plans are in place to ensure food security in the country. This meeting, which comes few days after President Bola Tinubu declared a state of emergency on food and water, seeks to improve food production.
There are some sectors, some ministries, some departments, some agencies at the state level that are critical to making food security happen. Then we identified 4 MDs at the state level. Then we did not stop there, because when you are talking of carrying everybody along, you are looking at leaving no one behind. And for us to carry our people along, we need to give responsibility and roles to local governments and community level.
Nigeria has been faced with multiple shocks, including COVID-19, Russian-Ukrainian war, as well as flooding, which continues to impact on food prices. What should the government be doing?
And you're looking out the window of the helicopter. You're looking at really productive land that's empty. There's no one on the land. It's not safe to be out there on the farms. And that's what we're hearing from government, from military. So part of the solution in the Northeast is peace and then production.
Let us recommit to enhancing resilience, promoting inclusivity, fostering innovation in agriculture and food production. Let us strive to ensure that no one is left behind and that the benefits of our well-functioning food systems are accessible to all regardless of their socioeconomic status or geographic location.
With the declaration of an emergency on food and water security by the federal government recently, help may have come the way of Nigerians who are currently bearing the brunt of the impact of insecurity, climate change and poor financing, as well as infrastructure on the availability of food.
In other stories, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has continued the Commission's review of the conduct of the 2023 general elections. This time, he met with INEC electoral officers and leaders of the various transport unions engaged during the polls. According to the INEC chairman, the meeting, among others, is to review the implementation of the logistics arrangements the Commission had with transport unions during the elections, as well as how the various election officers managed their units.
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, walks into the hall along with some national commissioners. He and his team are meeting with electoral officers and leaders of various transport unions that the Commission signed a memorandum of understanding with for logistics services during the 2023 general elections. The gathering is essentially to review how the memorandum of understanding with the transport unions was implemented.
The Commission signed a memorandum of understanding with the transport unions, the National Union of Road Transport Workers, the National Association of Road Transport Owners, and the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria. Today we are here to attend to the question of how far and how well we performed in our respective duties during the election. As field workers, We expect to hear from you the challenges encountered and how you resolve them in the field.
Also to be reviewed at this meeting are issues that border on the deployment of technology and its usage, feedback from the implementation of the expansion of voter access to polling units, as well as the receiving and deployment of electoral materials.
Today, we commenced a more focused engagement at the national level with the Commission's frontline officials, the electoral officers. We also considered it appropriate to interface with transport providers. This meeting, therefore, provides an opportunity to interact on a wide range of themes, covering, number one, we need to review the general state of preparedness for the 2023 general election. Number 5, receipt and deployment of election materials. 6, technology during elections. Matters arising from the implementation of the expansion of voter access to polling units.
INEC had a similar meeting with resident electoral commissioners on July the 4th, reviewing in that meeting the conduct of those officers and their delivery during the elections. The Commission is hoping to hold this meeting with all the election stakeholders to document the strengths and weaknesses of the 2023 general elections, with the hope that the outcome from these meetings will better the conduct of future elections.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's oil exploration rig count rises by more than 27% year-on-year to 14 in June, according to a report released by OPEC. That's in Business News. Join us again.
Welcome back. In a bid to finalize arrangements on the distribution of palliatives to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal, President Bola Tinubu and Vice President Kashim Shettima today met with the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and some governors, including those of Imo, Kwara, Lagos, and Ogun. The meeting, according to the President's Special Advisor on Special Duties, Communications and Strategy, Mr. Dele Alake, is part of President Tinubu's continued consultation with key players on how to get the economy on sound footing. This meeting, which also had former Governor of Kano State, Abdullahi Ganduje, in attendance, comes a day after President Bola Tinubu ordered a review of the 8,000 Naira conditional cash transfer program for the most vulnerable households in the country. The presidency had also proposed the distribution of grains and fertilizers to farmers, also as part of measures to boost food security in the country. Mmesoma Energy Services Limited has become the first oil marketer to take advantage of the deregulated downstream oil sector by bringing in 27 million litres of PMS for local consumption. The vessel St. Nene, which berthed at Mmesoma Jetty in Ijegun, Lagos, is set to cost about $17 million. At a brief ceremony in Lagos to unveil the product, the Chief Executive Officer of the company, Mr. Debo Olujimi, appealed to the federal government to find a special window for the sourcing of FX for petroleum products.
Early in the week, feelers were rife concerning a PMS cargo destined for the Lagos waters. And what's interesting is it's not governments, but a private entity. So we followed up. The vessel berthed here at the Ijegun waters, and immediately men went to work to begin the discharge process. "24 hours later, industry stakeholders began converging for a milestone event. 20,000 metric tons of PMX, equivalent of 27 million litres, is the first PMS vessel to arrive Nigeria post-subsidy removal, courtesy of Mmesoma Oil Services.
For this cargo here, it cost almost about $70 million. And at $17 million today is not where you can go into the I&E market to find where you're going to buy the money.
It's official. Anyone with the capacity and financial muscle can join the business in bringing in petrol, which will in turn increase the number of marketers and perhaps impact pricing.
When we talk about deregulation, People just think about increase in price. Actually, it is not. It is opening up the space so that there will be more participation. Today we have bankers here, we have suppliers. It wasn't so a week ago.
With deregulation, supply and distribution isn't so much of worry. FX and local refining capacity is.
We call on the government if government can help in actually finding a window where this issue of dollars are resolved and we can have a fixed market rate to bring in this and access this without any condition, just for the PMS. Then it will go a long way to ease the sufferings of Nigerians. I think that's actually the way forward.
From the financiers to the suppliers and the unions, everyone has got some kind words for the feat achieved here.
It's very instructive to see that the first cargo of PMS that was brought into the country under the new policy regime from the federal government was actually financed by Polaris Bank. Emade passes the bill on all fronts and will continue to look forward to working with more partners.
As generously spoken and anticipated, more entities will and should join the Emade Group in helping realize the full potentials of a deregulated downstream petroleum sector.
It's now time for business news with Anne Waldo.
Thank you, Ayatunde. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin with the oil and gas sector. And Nigeria's oil exploration rig count improved by 27.3% year-on-year to the June the 14th, 2023, coming from 11, which was recorded in a comparative period in 2022. According to the monthly oil market report for July, which was released by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, the index, which measures activities in the upstream sector of the petroleum industry, also went up by 7.7% month-on-month from 13 rigs recorded in the month of May. Although OPEC did not specify the factors behind the improved rig count, oil experts have attributed it to the Petroleum Industry Act, a comprehensive legislation which has encouraged stakeholders, including investors and financiers, to inject more resources into the sector. The Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI, has asked the Central Bank of Nigeria to remove the foreign exchange restrictions for importing 43 products in its list. In a statement released by the president of the LCCI, Michael Olawale Cole, on the economy, the Chamber explained that this is critical to enhancing stability, liquidity, and transparency in the forex market. Mr. Olawale Cole also recommended that the CBN should communicate the latest framework for exchange rate management and enhance the consistency of the current framework for monetary policy operations to ensure price stability. Well, unfortunately, the market is wearing the same color as I am today. Well, there's a domestic market failed to keep up with a positive trend today. It started the week with, but due to pockets of bargain hunting by some investors. Laddie Williams has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Well, today we see a little profit taken in midweek session there, 0.01% down, marginal loss, 63,000 levels still holding for the all-share index. Let's look at the activity chart now. We'll see it's a sea of red there. 473 million units of stocks valued at 10.1 billion. We see values down about 76% compared to yesterday. Deals losing the 8K level, 7,403. And we see a negative market breadth today. And that's why we see the bear making an appearance today. Let's flip over to the gainers counter now. We see Honeywell Flour there topping the counter up 10%. 3.63 kobo could be connected to that ruling by the Federal High Court in Lagos ordering EcoBank Nigeria to pay the sum of 72 billion naira in damages to Honeywell Flour. So maybe that got investors excited, taking that up 10%. Eternal is also on that counter, 9.98%. Let's look at the losers counter now. So we see Gary Gould topping the counter, down 10% after 2 days of gains. So today, the midweek trading session, still a positive week on day 3. That's the Stock Market Report. I'm Laddie Williams. It's back to you, Anne.
That's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawado. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Ayat Sunday.
Many thanks, Anne. Well, coming up next on the news at 10, Russian missile attacks hit Ukraine's Black Sea coast, destroy 60,000 tons of grain, leaving storage infrastructure damaged. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The news just in reports that governors of the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC, are meeting behind closed doors to discuss the state of affairs of the ruling party. That's the APC. Well, this is as a result of the resignation of the APC National Chairman Abdullahi Adamu recently, and of course the party's National Secretary, erstwhile National Party Secretary Iyola Omishore. Once again, the governors of the APC are meeting behind closed doors to discuss the state of affairs of the ruling party, the All Progressives Congress, APC. Russian officials have confirmed missile attacks on Ukraine's Black Sea coast, destroying 60,000 tons of grain and damaging storage infrastructure. Agriculture Minister Mykola Solsky said a considerable amount of export infrastructure was out of operation. Here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. It's emerged the American soldier who fled to North Korea had been detained for getting into fights in South Korea before he crossed the border. Travis King, seen here in the black t-shirt and cap moments before he ran, had also damaged a police car and had recently spent time in a detention facility in Seoul. The 23-year-old serviceman had recently been released and was being sent back to the US when he escaped. It remains unclear what his intentions were for crossing the border.
Someone ran close to me very fast, and I thought, what is going on? I didn't think anyone who was sane would want to go to North Korea, so I assumed it was some kind of stunt to, run to the North Korean border fence and have someone film it or something like that.
More than 2,000 residents are being evacuated from 4 villages in Russian-occupied Crimea after a fire that triggered hours of explosions at a nearby ammunition depot. The cause of the fire at a military training ground near the city of Stary Krim has not been explained, but unconfirmed reports on social media spoke of 3 Ukrainian strikes. Overnight, Russia launched an air attack on the Ukraine port of Odessa for the 2nd night in a row. Here, a grain and oil terminal hit, damaging tanks and equipment for loading. Russia's president will not attend a summit in South Africa next month, that's according to the country's president. The announcement comes after South Africa's leader said any attempt to arrest Vladimir Putin would be a declaration of war against Russia. Court documents show Cyril Ramaphosa was against arresting Mr. Putin. If Vladimir Putin had left Russian soil, he would have been subject to an International Criminal Court arrest warrant. Ukraine's farmers say they fear the worst after Russia's withdrawal from the Black Sea grain deal, which could make an already dire financial situation catastrophic. On Monday, Russia pulled out of the Black Sea Grain Initiative, a Turkish and UN-brokered accord that has made it possible for Ukraine to export grain over the past year, despite the war raging on.
Ukraine is a key player in world food supply. I feel like feeding the world, seeing that being destroyed by the Russians, and by them trying to use food as a weapon. It's just, I don't have words for this. It's just completely crazy, and that we let this happen.
Meanwhile, the head of Britain's MI6 Foreign Spy Service, Sir Richard Moore, has invited discontented Russians to share their secrets with British intelligence services during a rare public speech.
Many Russians are wrestling with the same dilemmas and the same tugs of conscience as their predecessors did in 1968. I invite them to do what others have already done this past 18 months and join hands with us. Our door is always open. We will handle their offers of help with the discretion and professionalism for which my service is famed. Their secrets will always be safe with us.
Kenya has closed schools in the country's two main cities as a three-day opposition protest kicks off with demonstrations confronting police. Tear gas has been fired in the capital Nairobi and the coastal city of Mombasa at those protesting over the high cost of living. Many businesses have remained shut over fears of looting, with people scared of getting caught up in violent clashes. Last week, at least 14 people died in protests, 10 were shot by police. And an Australian sailor has finally touched dry land after months adrift at sea with his dog until a surprise rescue by a Mexican fishing ship.
To the captain and this fishing company that saved my life, I mean, what do you say? I'm just so grateful.
The castaway, 54-year-old Timothy Lindsay Shaddock, was spotted on a catamaran in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Mexico. The sailor and his dog had originally set sail in April from the Mexican coastal city of La Paz, bound for French Polynesia. He said they survived their ordeal by eating raw fish and drinking rainwater. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Let's get the latest from the world of sports with Jeffrey Uzono. Jeffrey?
Thanks, Ayat. Sunday is now ours to kick off at the 9th edition of the FIFA Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand on Thursday. This is the first Women's World Cup to have 2 host nations and 32 teams participating, where 64 matches will be played across 9 cities.
Anticipated 9th edition of the FIFA Women's World Cup begins on Thursday. The 2023 Women's World Cup is set to be the biggest edition ever, with FIFA expanding the tournament to 32 teams. Every player at the Women's World Cup will be paid at least $30,000 by FIFA, and the 23 players in the title-winning team will each get $270,000. Australia and New Zealand will host the competition, which will be the first in the Southern Hemisphere, where the Republic of Ireland, Vietnam, Zambia, Haiti, Morocco, Panama, the Philippines and Portugal will make their debut. Defending champions USA are eager to win the tournament for the 5th time.
New Zealand, Alex.
Thank you.
Excited to be here?
Yeah, it's so good to be here, finally. Like 24 hours.
You excited to be in New Zealand?
Very excited.
Canada's Christine Sinclair and Super Falcons captain Onomebi will be the oldest players to feature in this year's tournament. Both players aged 40 will be making their 6th appearance at the World Cup. Despite a recent poor run of form, Nigeria's Super Falcons remain the most experienced African team in the tournament, having featured in all previous editions. Barcelona forward Azizat Oshola, Desire Okbaranozie, Rashidat Ajibade, Francisca Odega and Gift Monday are some of the players to watch out for in the Super Falcons squad managed by coach Randy Waldrum.
Personally, I feel like we have a good team. If everything is being done right, I think this team can actually go far at the upcoming World Cup. But of course, regardless of whatever, we're still going to go out there, fight as always, do our job and see what we can do.
The opening game between co-hosts New Zealand and Norway will be played in front of an expected record crowd of 82,500.
And all the best to the Super Falcons. 100 meters hurdles world record holder Toby Amusha has vowed to fight after being charged and provisionally suspended with missing 3 doping tests. The 26-year-old, who denies taking performance-enhancing substances, will miss the World Athletics Championship in Budapest next month if the Athletics Integrity Unit upholds the suspension. Ayotunde is back to you, and all the best to our girls.
Indeed, all the best to our girls. Many thanks again, Jeffrey. And the main news again. The Senate today set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the alleged killings of some residents of border communities in Katsina State in February 2021, as well as the attack on the Chief of Staff to the Katsina State Governor on July the 13th this year by officials of the Nigeria Customs Service. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. Do have a good night.